Sup guys, it's Toad. I'm back with you, Scott. I am here, man. Hopefully you're still hanging out, man. Um, Yesterday, yeah, the streak ended yesterday. Unfortunately for me, of course. Unfortunately for all of us, really. If you guys are tailing me, we had a good run. 4 days where I was on a 16-3 run. I believe is what it was, and a 13-1 college basketball run over that span. The college basketball run continued 2-0 in college basketball yesterday, so I was off to a nice start. I was like, oh man, here the streak continued up to 18-3 and 15-1 in college basketball. Yeah, that's true. David or Top, whichever one of you is there. Yeah, I am definitely on black people time right now. Gonna try to get this done quick. Monday, it's a small slate though, so I gotta finish talking about yesterday though. Yeah. Anyway, St. Peter's with the win yesterday, kicking off the day right, and then we had UCF with a win as well. I mean, they got into the lead in the second half, almost gave it up, but didn't. So they were able to get that win and cover there as a small favorite. So we hit on both of those. Then it just went downhill from there. The streaks have ended. The LA Clippers obviously could not get it done. Just bad shooting. Kawhi Leonard did not play in the game, although I didn't think that really would affect the handicap that much. They just did not have a good game. And then I don't know what to tell you about the Colorado Avalanche, man. I thought that was a solid handicap, fading Binnington off of the ridiculous I was going to call it the World Cup, the Four Nations performance there. And we had the 1-0 lead with the Avs early in that game, and then they definitely fell apart. They got slightly outplayed in the game. It was a close game, really, statistically, but obviously it did not happen. You want it to maybe not be as close a game when you have a favorite like that on the road, but I thought it was the right way to look. It was not. We got to get back into it, man. Hockey, as it starts getting going again, start to ramp it up a little bit. It's a little bit tougher to handicap, I think, coming off this new all-star format. I'm going to make excuses the whole time. Let's talk about today. I got two college basketball plays today, and I'm skipping the other sports, even though there is a decent size NBA card, or NBA slate, I should say. And there are two hockey games that I really just don't want to get involved in. College basketball, we do have a game at noon in the MEAC. We got a lot of bad conferences playing today. The MEAC, the Southland, A-Sun, all these conferences in action. I think the SWAC is in here. A few big conference games that I will talk about. But the first game up, Stony Brook at Hampton. This is a game that almost made my card, and it would be a play plus the points on Stony Brook. This is a postponement, I believe. So this is a rescheduled game, which I think is why it's at noon. Don't know why they scheduled it at noon, but this game got postponed for, I don't even know what, some weather-related thing not too long ago. Now it's being played today at noon. Hampton is certainly the better team here, but you're looking at a situation where Hampton, they just upset UNC Wilmington, man. And that was after they had a little break because this Stony Brook game was supposed to have been played prior to that one. Huge win over UNC Wilmington, though. I mean, UNC Wilmington, as I keep saying, is probably the best team in this conference, in the Colonial or Coastal, if you want to be gay about it. Hampton, the only issue that I would have with this really, though, like I would want to fade them because I do think they're in a letdown spot. But the one thing is, this is going to be senior day for them now. So what was going to be senior night, which was that UNC Wilmington game, and maybe they did play like it in that game, is now this game. But then the question does have to get posed. Do they actually still celebrate senior night in that game against Wilmington? And are they not going to do it in this weird noontime game on a weekday that probably nobody's going to show up for? So maybe that's the case. So maybe this actually won't be their senior day, even though it is their final home game. So that being the case, it would be a stronger play against Hampton. I'm not going to dive in and try to figure this out. Maybe I should, but I think I'm just going to skip the game anyway. But Stony Brook, they're coming off a bad loss to NCA&T. They've lost 3 games in a row. And I mean, Stony Brook is terrible, but NCA&T is the only team that I would consider to be worse than they are in this conference. That's a pretty ugly loss to NCA&T, although NCA&T may have been a favorite. Actually, they were a 3.5-point favorite. So Osviger's telling you these teams are basically equally bad. But it is also a Third straight road game for Stony Brook, so I don't really want to play them for that reason either. Those road games of travel can kind of pile up, so I'm just going to stay away. But overall, the play does look like it would be in Stony Brook. I'm talking about this shitty game way too much, I think. Hampton down from 9.5 to 9 with juice, 75% of the tickets, 58% of the cash. So the market read looks in agreement with me on that one on Stony Brook. Again, it won't be a play. A good game in the Colonial comes up at 6 p.m. with UNC Wilmington and William & Mary. This is a revenge spot for William & Mary, as they lost, I believe, on, was it MLK Day? I think it was. I remember watching that game. William & Mary was at UNC Wilmington. UNC Wilmington won that game fairly easily. So it is revenge for William & Mary, but UNC Wilmington is also the better of these two teams, and they're on a 2-game slide, including that loss to Hampton, which was just kind of a ridiculous loss. So I kind of expect them to bounce back from that. I think the loss to Elon that ended that long win streak for them, I think kind of sent them into a tailspin. A lot of times when you're on that long win streak, as I always say, and you lose a game, sometimes that can hang you over into the next game, and you, in effect, lose the game twice. And I think that might have been what happened with Wilmington there. So I think they're going to bounce back from this bad Hampton performance, and I think maybe they were looking ahead to this game against William & Mary, because William & Mary is one of the top teams in this conference, at least record-wise, even though I don't think they're actually the best team. I think UNC Wilmington is. So I think UNC Wilmington will actually have some extra focus for that reason. William & Mary, of course, this is a home game for them, and it's revenge for them, so they're also going to show up for this game. Not their final home game, but they're coming off a win over Elon, though, so the public bettors like to do this transitive thing where they might come in and say, hey, well, wait a minute. William & Mary, they have revenge here. They just beat Elon on the road, and UNC Wilmington lost to Elon, and you're telling me you're giving me 2.5 points at home with William & Mary and think that maybe it looks tempting to take William & Mary? I would disagree. I like UNC Wilmington in this one. They're up from 1.5 to 2.5. Not going to play the game, but that's just some thoughts on that game. North Carolina is at Florida State, and I got to tell you, North Carolina, they basically need to win every game remaining on their schedule if they're going to want to get into the tournament. If they win these next 3, then it's probably not going to be a necessity that they beat Duke. But, I mean, UNC, they're on the bubble right now. In my bracketology, I have them first 4 out right now. I have them the last of the first 4 out. They're going to need to win these games, though, man. They're going to Florida State here. They're coming off a few wins in a row now, beating Virginia. I mean, they're beating some teams that usually are good and have good program history, but aren't good right now, which Florida State is actually a little bit better than those teams. So this is not going to be that easy of a task going down to Tallahassee to do it, but UNC may have extra motivation here, whereas Florida State, yeah, they're going to try to show up for a game against North Carolina. I mean, it's a named North Carolina team, but Florida State is coming off a pretty big game against Louisville. A ranked Louisville team. Florida State kind of hung in this game, even though they were losing the whole game. They were only down 2 possessions in the final couple minutes of the game, so they kind of came back in this game after Louisville, I think, probably just took their foot off the gas. Florida State's coming off that, and they got Duke up next. I don't really think they're going to overlook North Carolina, though. I mean, North Carolina is still a named team, so I expect both teams are going to show up here. The market read is on North Carolina, though. They're up from 1.5 to 2 with juice, 61% of the cash on them, 67% of tickets on FSU. I would agree with the market in this one. I do think North Carolina, maybe that extra tournament motivation is going to get them over the hump in this game. And I actually think they're an undervalued team right now with everybody shitting on them so much. And it's a fairly short line here in this game, in my opinion. I still think North Carolina is not as bad as people think they are. And I think their wins over some inferior teams recently isn't really going to change people's opinion of them. So that is what I think there. All right, we'll skip a bunch of the rest of these games here. Lipscomb, arguably you could argue that Lipscomb is in a fade spot here, as they just beat Northern Alabama or North Alabama, which those two teams are right there atop the Atlantic Sun for being the 1 seed in this conference. Or I think Lipscomb is the best team in this conference. North Alabama is probably second. Lipscomb, big win for them, double-digit win at home over North Alabama, which was also a revenge win. North Alabama, their only unavenged losses to Eastern Kentucky, as they actually lost to Eastern Kentucky twice. Lipscomb, did. Other than that, they got the revenge against Queens, and then they got the revenge against North Alabama. Now Austin P in this game is actually in the revenge spot as Lipscomb beat them at Lipscomb by 28 points. And coming off this big game, and with Lipscomb having their final game, even though it's against a bad Central Arkansas team, it's in 2 days, and it is their senior night. It is their final home game, so it is possible they don't really have total focus on Austin P, although the problem is if they're still trying to get the 1 seed, they can't afford to lose these remaining games, so that's the one caveat there, even though it does look like it's not a very good spot for Lipscomb. Austin P, I know they had a really, really bad loss a couple of games ago against Bellarmine, who didn't even have a win in this conference. And not only did Bellarmine get their first win in conference, but they beat Austin P by, 26 points? I mean, that's just ridiculous. I don't know what that was. Austin P bounced back nicely, though, and won on the road at Queens, who I think is overrated, but Queens has had a pretty decent season. So Austin P is coming off a fairly big win, but this is going to be their final home game, and it's the best team in the conference coming into their place. So that's what we got going on there. And then I don't know what I'm looking at here, but it looks like Austin P has a guy with one arm, Hansel and Manuel. I have no idea what this is. I'm like, why am I seeing a guy with one arm here? He looks like Rajon Rondo with one arm. Is this guy on Austin P? Maybe he is. I don't know. So you got Austin P with the one-armed man out there. And if you bet on Austin P, like I did when they lost that game against, what was the game that I lost on? I forget. I think it was this first game against Queens. Then you could start calling Austin P the one-armed bandit, baby. They're robbing me of my money. Austin P would be the way I would lean in this game, though. Leaning with the one-armed man there, the one-armed bandit, if they take your money, if they don't win this game. Well, they don't need to win. They just need to cover. Lipscomb is down from 8 with heavy juice down to 8 with a little bit less juice, I guess. So slight movement on that game towards Austin P. I would agree with that side. And then North Alabama is going to Central Arkansas. They're coming off that big game against Lipscomb, which ended a long win streak for them. So that's the type of game that maybe could hang them over. They already beat Central Arkansas handily by 29 points at home. So it's not like it's going to be a game that they're really going to have a whole lot of focus on. And they got Queens to finish the season, which, by the way, is a revenge game because they lost at Queens. And Queens has been having a decent season, like I said. And that's North Alabama's senior night in 2 nights. That's their final home game. So bad spot for North Alabama as well, in my opinion here. But Central Arkansas, I call them CARC because they're just C-ARC everywhere. They're pretty bad, but they did just get 2 wins in the last 3 games, which may give them a little bit of confidence. And one of them was against this West Georgia team who's new to Division I and not a good team. That's a nice confidence-building win, I would say, really. This is Central Arkansas's final home game, and they get one of the top teams in the conference coming in to play them. So I think Central Arkansas will try to show up in this game. It's just how bad are they is really the question. It's being factored into the line. North Alabama is up from 11.5 to 11.5 with juice. I would lean to taking the points with Central Arkansas. Now we get to one of my plays, and if you know the way that I do things, you know what it's going to be already. It is Nebraska on the money line, -110. This is on Fox Sports 1 at 8 p.m. This is one of the big games of the night, really. There aren't too many big conference games here. This is a Big Ten matchup. Pretty decent matchup, actually. And it's a competitively priced game, of course, because it's right around a pick 'em. People are going to look at this and say, well, wait a minute. You got a ranked Michigan team. It's been playing really well. They only have 3 conference losses. Really nice record. And then Nebraska is like almost installed as the favorite here. So you get a situation where it's like what I always talk about. You have basically an unranked home favorite. Essentially, this meets that standard, I think, against a ranked road underdog, basically. So, you know, the public likes to come in on that ranked road underdog, thinking that there is value there, and that ranked road underdog is usually the better team, but it's usually a lot closer than people think. So that tends to be a moneymaker. It was a really big moneymaker last year. This year, it hasn't been as good, but I like Nebraska for multiple reasons in this game. Not only just because the line, I think, is misleading here, where let's see what the market looks like here. If I can actually type for once, Nebraska is still sitting at a pick 'em. 61% of the cash on them, 64% of the tickets on Michigan. So it's shaping up to look like the market read is going to be a pros versus Joes type of market here, where this is one of the bigger games of the day. So the public probably will be coming in on this game. They'll be coming in on the Michigan side, and it looks like that must be the case here, which is what I would expect. With the money possibly coming in on Nebraska, and I would agree with that. Michigan, yeah, they're a good team, and I think they're definitely one of the top teams in the Big Ten. It's them, Wisconsin. Purdue really is kind of still in the mix for it. Michigan State. And then I think Maryland and UCLA maybe right behind those teams. Michigan, they're coming off a huge game against Michigan State, though, man. And they were on a huge roll. So this is kind of one of those spots where in your team and you got a long win streak, 6-game win streak for Michigan. And then you have, not only do you lose a game, but it's this highly touted game, the Battle of Michigan against your rival, Michigan State. And it was actually a closer game than it looks like. Michigan State won the game by 13, but you can see right here, this game was close in the final minutes. Michigan was still only down 4 with 4.5 minutes to go, basically. And then, like Michigan State's opponents seemed to do, Michigan just fell completely silent. Michigan State, in their game against Illinois a couple games before this, Illinois didn't score for the last 8.5 minutes of the game. And I don't know if it's something about Michigan State, because I think Illinois is really having some problems right now, but these teams seem to just not be able to score down the stretch. Michigan State seems to be really throwing some like lockdown defense at you at the end of these games to put these games away, because Michigan didn't score for the last 4 minutes of this game, or actually 4.5 maybe, whatever it was. So kind of a similar type of ending to that game there, but I think that's a pretty heartbreaking loss, I would say, for Michigan, a big game. And Michigan, the other thing about this is not only are they coming off that big game and it ended that win streak that they had, they don't really have a big game next against Rutgers, but still, and they already beat Rutgers once, but Nebraska needs this game way more. I mean, Michigan, yeah, they're fighting for seeding. I mean, there's talk about, are they going to be a 3 seed or a 4 seed? Like, I don't think that's a huge motivating factor. Nebraska, I think, is going to have a much greater motivating factor here because they're a bubble team to make the tournament right now. So they need wins. This picture of Ballo on Indiana is crazy, man. I still think it's weird seeing him in an Indiana uniform, by the way. Really seems like it should be Arizona still. Nebraska, they've lost 2 of their last 3 games, which is also another reason why I actually like the spot for Nebraska. But Nebraska, as I was about to say, they're probably going to be highly motivated in this game because they need to build their resume a bit more to ensure that they're going to get into the tournament. I have them in right now, but I think I have them as one of the last 4 teams in, maybe one of the last 4 buys into the tournament, but they're on the bubble, so they got to get these wins. This win would really build their resume. I mean, they do have some decent games that are games that they should win coming up after this, so they should be okay, but they still are going to want to win this game, man. This is their biggest game left on the remainder of the schedule. It's at home where Nebraska has been better. So I like all of that, and they're coming off a pretty ugly loss at Penn State by 17 points. Maybe they're looking ahead to this. It was a second straight road game, not a good performance out of them. And when you have a team that just lost their last road game, as I always say, and they're coming back home in college basketball, and they're coming back to a place where they lost the last time they played on this floor, it really becomes kind of like a bounce back, like refocus scenario where they really want to focus and try to get a win there and redeem themselves. And I think that's what we're going to see here out of Nebraska. They lost to Maryland. I mean, no shame in that in their last home game. Maryland is definitely a good team. They played pretty competitively in that game. Prior to that, Nebraska was playing well at home, beating Ohio State, beating Illinois. They had gone through this weird stretch where they kind of lost their home advantage, but they had a lot of weird road games in there, some weird travel. So I think maybe that kind of affected them in some of those home games. But even in those games, they only lost by 3 and 5. I mean, they were competitive in those games, so they potentially could have still won those games. So Nebraska has really not been easy to beat in Lincoln on their home arena, at their home arena, I should say, and that is, or on their home floor. That's the handicap there, basically. That's a play on Nebraska. I like it. So that is one play that I have here. And then the other play that I have, I believe is right after this. No, it's at the same time at 8 p.m. And it's on ESPN Plus, so we can actually watch it. I'm actually going to go to the MEAC, where I've not had a MEAC play or a SWAC play all year, I don't think. And I'm going to finally do it. And I'm laying a huge favorite price. Norfolk State minus 13.5 is going to be the play in this one. I actually think this line is slightly short. Ken Pom, by the way, I believe has Nebraska losing by 1 or something. So he has that game pretty close. And by the way, Nebraska plays a little bit slower than Michigan, so they may try to slow that game down a little bit. And yes, Ken Pom has Michigan as the better team, but he has Nebraska as a pretty balanced team. It isn't that much worse than Michigan, so it lines up. I like Nebraska. But Norfolk State, they're easily the best team in the MEAC. I would be pretty shocked if they don't win the MEAC, although anything can happen in these crazy conference tournaments. But that's not the only reason why I like them here. I mean, that's obviously being factored into the line as their giant favorite. But KenPom, actually, I believe, has them winning this game by 14. And they are like somewhere in KenPom's rankings, they're in like the 170 something range. And every other team in this conference is like down in like the bottom 200s and 300s basically. So there is a big gap here. And not only all of that, but the main reason I like this, well, two reasons really. The one main reason that I think is the driving factor here is that Norfolk State has one conference loss, and guess who that loss was to? Oh yeah, it was on the road to Morgan State by 4 points. And who was their opponent tonight? Morgan State. So this is the team that dealt them their only conference loss. That is a motivating factor in college basketball, man. When you have one conference loss and you're the better team and you get that team one more time, especially at home, you're definitely motivated for that. And not only that, but Norfolk State, all of the remaining games are road games. So this is their senior night as well. This is their final home game where you celebrate the seniors. Some of these guys, this is the last time they're going to be able to play on this floor. You want to send them off right. So I think there are some huge motivating factors here for Norfolk State, and we're actually getting the short line. Like I said, they're the better all-around team. Morgan State is not good. The only issue that I have here is that Morgan State likes to play fast, and Norfolk State likes to play slow. So on the one hand, that's good. I mean, that should help Norfolk State even more as far as winning the game is concerned, because Morgan State doesn't want to play at that pace, and they can get frustrated. But Norfolk State, if you're laying a lot of points, it is tough to win by a margin like that when you're a slow-down team. But I just think this game with the motivating factors is too much of a mismatch. So I'm going to go with Norfolk State in this one for all those reasons. They're coming off an easy win over Coppin State, who was a very bad team, so really nothing to see there. So I think, yeah, they're not coming off of any sort of big game at all, so I think that helps as well. Morgan State, of course, they're going to be focused when they're playing the best team in the league, or the best team in the conference. So they're coming off a more difficult game against Howard, and this is their fourth road game in the last 5 games. So that's not really an easy spot either. They've been traveling all up and down the coast, basically, so that doesn't make it easier either for Morgan State. So that kind of adds to the handicap as well. So kind of a lot of things putting you on Norfolk State in this game, or putting me on them at the very least. As far as the market read is concerned, although, of course, let's see. I open up a new window here in Firefox. Come on, man. Norfolk, they're just sitting at 13, basically, with reduced juice. It's gone from reduced juice to just a straight 13 out. So you might be able to get 13 and not 13 and a half on this. We'll see what happens. Either way, I like it for all those reasons. Then if you look at Norfolk State's resume here, their home games in conference, all the teams that they played that are like bottom, in the bottom like 100 in KenPom's rankings, like or below 300, I should say, in KenPom's rankings, like Morgan State is one of those teams. If you look at how Norfolk State did in those home games, they won basically all those games by margin. They beat Maryland Eastern Shore by 22. They beat Coppin State by 23. Howard by 17. South Carolina State was the only one where they didn't win by margin. That somehow I think they got taken into overtime. I don't know how. Only won by 2. NC Central, who's actually one of the better teams in the conference, they beat by 13, so right at this number. And then Delaware State, they beat by 12. I'm not as concerned with that really, but Delaware State's actually a little bit better than those teams as well. So Norfolk State has been winning by double digits in basically all of their conference home games. All of them except for 1, so I like that too. And all except for 3, they've won by this margin or more. And all of the ones against teams that are below 300 in KenPom's rankings, they've won by this margin against every single one of them, I'm pretty sure. So give me Norfolk State in that game. Those are my 2 plays, and now you can just hang out for me to shoot the shit about the rest of these games. I mean, the best game of the night, 9 p.m. Eastern on ESPN, Houston at Texas Tech. Number 5, Houston. Number 9, Texas Tech. This one's going to be interesting, man. Houston, they do have road revenge in this game because they lost at home to Texas Tech in overtime, and that's their only conference loss. So that is a big deal. Like I said, that's a big motivating factor when you're playing the only conference team that dealt you a loss. I think that's going to motivate Houston quite a bit here. But Houston is coming off a big win over Iowa State. That it was a highly touted top 10 matchup, although this is too, and this is revenge. But it's going to be a second straight big game for Houston and a third big game in the last 4 games with that travel. So it's going to be a third road game in 4 days. So they went to Arizona, came back home, and now they're going back out to Lubbock. So the travel spot isn't that great. They are coming off a big game, so it's 2 straight games that are big. But, I mean, Houston, they're big boys. I mean, they're used to having spots like this. So I don't know that that spot alone would be a reason to go against Houston, although it does make it a little bit more difficult. But the revenge angle is going to be a big motivator here. Texas Tech, of course, they're going to want to win this game as well, obviously, on their home floor. I mean, both these teams are very much securely in the tournament. I mean, Houston has an outside chance to steal a 1 seed. Probably not going to happen, but it's possible. Texas Tech looking like they're probably going to be around a 3 seed in the tournament. I don't think a whole lot is going to change regardless of the outcome of this game. Texas Tech is staying at home for 2 straight games here. They just won against West Virginia, which, whatever. I mean, that was just an expected win. So, yeah, the scheduling spot does set up a little bit better for Texas Tech. Which is probably why we're seeing the money come in on Texas Tech. But because this is such a huge revenge angle for Houston, and Houston is the better team, as they are installed as a road favorite here, I'm not so sure that I would want to try to play Texas Tech in this game. We got 58% of tickets on Houston, 68% of the cash coming in on Texas Tech. It would be crazy if Houston winds up with 2 conference losses and they're both to the same team. It may wind up being the case. Texas Tech may be catching them at a decent point in their schedule to get another win here, but I would not want to bet against this Houston team when they're facing a revenge spot against the only team that's beaten them, and that was a tough overtime loss with Houston being a home favorite in that game, and they probably shouldn't have lost that game. So tough handicap there. I would, I guess, slightly lean with the market to Texas Tech there, but not a strong lean whatsoever in that game. Kansas is at Colorado, and Kansas, I mean, they've been playing pretty poorly, and I told you they were going to bounce back with that game against Oklahoma State, and they did. They easily won that game, as I expected. I told you they would cover, which they did. Maybe I should have bet on it, but now, what is Kansas doing? Oh, yeah, they're going back out into elevation again to an unfamiliar venue, which they just did, and they really struggled. At Utah, at BYU, those are venues they're not familiar with, teams that are basically new to the Big 12. Colorado also is, and all 3 of those teams are also in elevation. So this is a weird scheduling setup for Kansas where they have 2 road games against some conference newcomers in elevation. They come back home for 1 game, and now they go right back out into elevation again. And by the way, after this, they got Texas Tech, Houston, and Arizona to finish the season. So 3 much bigger games as well. So the setup here, and they're coming off a pretty satisfying win, even though I don't know if they're going to get overconfident from that win because everybody's been shitting on them, but I don't think this sets up very well for Kansas. 3 road games in 4 games, and all of them in unfamiliar venues into elevation with possible look-aheads here. I don't think it's a good spot for Kansas, so for me, I would either grab the points with Colorado or just stay away, and I am staying away. Colorado, after playing really, really poorly in conference, I think they didn't have any conference wins up until recently, but in their last 3 games, they've gotten 2 conference wins. And yeah, they're coming off a big win over Baylor. That's a big win, but maybe Colorado's kind of figuring something out and starting to play basketball, play a little bit better basketball, let's say. So maybe. And this is their biggest remaining home game, even though they do have senior night against TCU to finish the season. But Kansas is coming into their place, man. So Colorado's going to step it up. They might have a little bit of momentum. They're coming off some better performances. I don't think they're going to be in a letdown spot off of beating Baylor, who's been kind of mediocre this year. It's a big win for Colorado, but, I just don't think they're going to get, overconfident. I mean, again, you have Kansas coming into your place. You're going to show up when that's the case. Kansas is up from 7 with reduced juice to 7 with a little bit more juice, still reduced. I don't see the percentages yet, but I would take the 7 with Colorado or leave the game alone in that game. NHL, we got 2 games. We got San Jose and Winnipeg. Winnipeg's just a huge favorite. San Jose played yesterday. They lost again. I don't know what else to say about this game. Winnipeg played 2 days ago against St. Louis, and they had that crazy shootout win in a game that was really physical, a lot of fights going on, but I mean, San Jose is so bad. Winnipeg is like far and away the better team. It's one of the biggest hockey favorites you'll see all year, up to minus 460 now. So I'm going to leave this game completely alone. There's no way I want to try to do anything with this game. And Vegas at LA is actually a pretty good matchup, with both of these teams coming off near losses in their first game out of the break. Vegas won against Vancouver by 2, but they had an empty netter to push the lead to 2 at the end. Kings did the same against Utah. They won by 2 with an empty netter at the end. So both of these teams played close games, had close calls. Now they're playing each other. LA is staying at home, I believe. Vegas just traveling from Vegas to LA, so not big travel there. Vegas is up from minus 107 to minus 110, though. 82% of tickets, 99% of the cash. So the market read is looking like it's on the Kings, but I just don't really have much of a read on this game at all. I mean, the market read would say Kings. Vegas is the slightly better team, so maybe the Kings are going to turn it on a little bit more for this game. I don't know. Vegas, I mean, the travel spot is slightly worse, but not by a whole lot. So I don't know what else to think about that game, but that's what we have there in that game. And then we do have an NBA slate today, which I'm not going to play any of these games, even though it's a fairly substantial slate here. Unfortunately for the Clippers, obviously, they were without Kawhi Leonard last night. They're in a back-to-back. They might have Kawhi for this game. I don't know. Detroit is also in a back-to-back and scored 148 points against Atlanta last night. This had to have been an overtime game, right? It wasn't. Are you serious? Both teams in this game scored over 140 in regulation. Man, I don't even know what to say about this. This is the new NBA, I guess. I don't know. But with Detroit coming off a game like that and LA having a bad game yesterday at Indiana, even though LA is traveling, it's only from Indiana to Detroit. Detroit is actually traveling as well, back up home from Atlanta after having scored almost 150 points. I would look to the Clippers in this game or just leave the game alone. Clippers are up from 1-2, even though they have 71% of tickets, 52% of the cash on the Pistons. Not sure I would agree with that in this spot. I would lean to the Clippers slightly in that game. Denver is playing at Indiana. Denver didn't play yesterday. Indiana played yesterday. They're staying at home. Got that high-scoring win over the Clippers. Denver at least has had rest, and they're leaving home after a pretty ugly loss to the Lakers, even though that was a game you step up for. It was the Lakers. I think Denver was coming out of the All-Star break, though, from that game, if I'm not mistaken, and that game ended their long win streak. So will that hang them over? I don't know, because that was a big game, and it did end a long win streak for Denver. Now they have to travel to Indiana, so maybe it will hang them over a little bit, but Denver at least rested yesterday, so I don't know what I would want to do with this game. Denver's up from 3.5 to 5, 81% of tickets, 72% of the cash on them, so it looks like the line has moved up on them a little bit, but there could be some like injury news or something that I'm not really paying attention to move that line up, because it looks like Denver's going to be public and have less of the cash on them, so I'm going to stay away from that as well. If I was going to play any game on the NBA slate here, it would be taking the points with the Washington Wizards. As ridiculous as that sounds in this awful game that I wouldn't talk about otherwise, Brooklyn at Washington. Brooklyn just pulled off a big upset win at Philadelphia, man. They were double-digit underdogs in this game, probably 11.5, and they won the game against Philadelphia, and now they're traveling. That was not yesterday, I don't believe, but now they're traveling down to Washington. Philadelphia to Washington, not huge travel at all, but still, Brooklyn's coming off a big win. Washington, I mean, yeah, they're the worst team in basketball. They're coming off a bad loss again. What else is new? At Orlando, now they're back home. Last time they played on this floor, they actually played competitively, at least, against Indiana and Milwaukee. They played decently, so they've been better on this floor than they have on the road, at least. Nets are actually down from 3 to 2.5 here. Threes may still be out there. 89% of tickets, 98% of the cash, but I expect that to kind of turn around. I don't think the money percentage is going to be on the Nets in this one. I think the public ticket percentage probably will be, because nobody's going to want Washington. Nobody's going to want to play in this game at all. So, but I think Washington would be the right side there with Brooklyn coming off that win there. And then the one actual big game is Minnesota at OKC. These teams are playing for the third time in the last 4 games. Minnesota won the game at home going into the All-Star break. Weird spot for OKC. OKC got their revenge last night on the same floor at Minnesota, and I told you that they would, although Oklahoma City didn't cover in that game. They won and didn't cover. Now they're going to OKC, and now this is a quick turnaround road revenge spot with no time off, where both teams are having to go to OKC. And in this game, I would look to take the points in another zigzag, man. I think this could be a zigzag type of series where you had Minnesota take the first game, OKC adjusted, got the next one, and now you're not even asking Minnesota to win this game. You'd just be asking them to cover the number. So that is the way that I would look in this game. Thunder are sitting at a 12-point favorite. They do have 69% of the cash on them, though, with 55% of tickets on the T-Wolves. So the market read looks to be in disagreement with me. Again, I disagree with it. I think Minnesota could turn it around, make the adjustments, because they're the team that has the adjustments to make after they lost last night. So I think that would make more sense. And you only have to get within this huge number to get the cover there. So the Thunder could easily win this game and not cover. But then again, you got to look at the injury status here, as the T-Wolves have DiVincenzo's still going to be out. Gobert, I assume, probably wound up not playing last night. He's been listed as day-to-day. Julius Randle is supposed to come back. I don't know if he's going to. If Randle comes back, I would be more hesitant on the T-Wolves, by the way, because Randle, he's kind of a star player, and if you reinsert him into the lineup after being gone for a while, it could be like a weird chemistry issue. So I don't know if I would want to deal with that, and Randle's not a very good defensive player, so I don't love that. And then you have Portland having one of the biggest margins of victory in the NBA this year, coming off beating Charlotte. I know Charlotte sucks, but Portland just beat them by 53. I mean, that's just insane. And now they're going out to Utah off of that. I don't know that that's the greatest spot for Portland, man, but the problem is Utah just won for me. I had Utah in this game against Houston, and they pulled off the nice home upset. So Utah's coming off a big game as well. So I would just leave that alone. But, man, when you have a team that wins by 50-plus in the NBA, it hasn't happened very often. The Celtics did it, I believe, not that long ago. And the Celtics, I think it was last year, and the Celtics were a major fade team after they did it to the Warriors, I think. And then I faded them the game after that, and I believe they lost outright at Cleveland, and Cleveland wasn't as good last year as they are this year. So, you don't want to play on a team that just scored, they just won by over 50. That's what I'll say. That's going to do it for me. My plays today, one more time: Nebraska money line college basketball, Norfolk State minus 13.5 also in college basketball. Tower Gang Toad on Twitter. Let's keep the streak going in college basketball, up to 15-1 run. Let's keep it going, baby. Tower Gang, patreon.com/Tower Gang. Subscribe to the most offensive podcast, man. You get bonus content. That's going to do it. I got to run. Peace, everybody.